used by the special counsel Robert Mueller in the Russia investigation. Jeffrey Toobin, what do you make of this? It's been going on already for 18 months and now for maybe an additional as long as 6 months.
Well, it is not unusual for grand juries to be extended, but the obvious single conclusion you can draw is that Mueller isn't finished. The investigation isn't over. Now, is he just at the wrapping up stage, or is he still doing an active investigation? I don't think any of us can say that with certainty. The only thing this tells you for sure is that Mueller isn't finished. So the people who were saying, well, he's about to hand in his report in the next few weeks, I think that's that idea at this point is extremely unlikely.
Phil, what does it tell you?
I spent 4.5 years with that guy. Let's go through some characteristics with Robert Mueller, as his intel advisor. Valor, experience, judgment. I did not list the word patience. He's a meticulous man, but sitting beside him for 4.5 years, he does not like to sit around and say, well, why don't we just continue and tie up loose ends? I agree with Jeffrey. We don't know what's happening here, but I'd wager he's not sitting here saying, let me just figure out how to conclude the final report. There will be more indictments. He's sitting around saying, how do we get the people who are higher up the food chain, I'd say.
The new House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Jerry Nadler, he's setting a pretty high bar right now for evidence that would be needed to launch in the Judiciary Committee impeachment proceedings. Listen to what he said earlier today on CNN.
What I've said is that impeachment can't be partisan, and that you shouldn't do an impeachment unless you believe that you have such evidence, such great evidence of such terrible deeds, that when that evidence is laid out to the American people, you will probably get an appreciable fraction of the voters who supported the president to agree that you had to do it.
That's pretty significant, suggesting you need Trump supporters on board for impeachment proceedings to move forward.
That's right. Well, it suggests to me, Wolf, that Democrats and Jerry Nadler understand the political reality here. There are no written rules here that say you couldn't bring impeachment if the public didn't support it. But the political reality is you wouldn't want to move forward with an impeachment if the public didn't understand why you were doing it and support the underlying reasons for why you were doing it. And so that's what he's saying there. He's not saying all Trump supporters would need to necessarily understand and get on board with an impeachment proceeding, but he is saying that some Trump supporters would need to see the wisdom of that. And it's worth remembering, if you look at the way that Watergate unfolded and the public approval ratings for Richard Nixon during that time, it was a very slow erosion of support for him among his original supporters. And it was over time that people explained, that Congress explained, and they had their hearings and showed the public why this was so important. And that's the process that you would need to go through in this case as well.
And they played the audio tapes. That's what did it in convincing a whole bunch of Republicans, his own party, to go ahead and support some sort of impeachment. How do you see it?
I think the Democratic Party is at sort of an inflection point on this. You can see where the party leaders are trying to have a wait-and-see, measured, calm approach, and other, certainly more junior folks in the House are ready to impeach him yesterday. But it's going to make covering the candidates in 2020 really interesting, because they're all going to be asked this question right away. They're going to have to come prepared with an answer that satisfies the Democratic base, but also doesn't go too far out on a limb. And they don't want to make promises about things when Mueller still has potentially months left to go in his investigation.
Because they don't want to really do impeachment, Jeffrey, most of the Democrats, until Mueller comes out with his report.
And maybe not even then. I mean, Jerry Nadler and Nancy Pelosi were both in the Congress in 1998 when the Republicans impeached Bill Clinton. And they saw that it was a political disaster to impeach a president when it was quite clear that the Senate was never going to vote to remove him from office. That 67-vote barrier in the Senate is enormous. And I think what Jerry Nadler was saying there was, unless we can virtually guarantee that a substantial chunk of Republican senators will be willing to vote for removal of Donald Trump from office, we're not going to start this process in the first place. That's how they interpret the lesson of 1998.
Yeah, and as someone who covered that impeachment of Bill Clinton in the House of Representatives, his job approval numbers were actually going up as he was being impeached, and he wasn't convicted, as we know, during the trial in the Senate. Everyone stick around. Just ahead, how seriously is the president considering declaring a national emergency to build his border wall with Mexico and get around his opponents in Congress. And we're also learning right now more about the suspicious arrest and the criminal record of the American citizen charged with spying in Russia.